the Simcoe office here. She'll spend 2 days a week in Langton and 3 days a week in Simcoe. And so it's to help us get through the curve until we have the recruiting finished and we can have a permit coordinator in place for the Langton office.
So just to be clear, we will have a full-time permit coordinator in the West End?
We're reviewing our service options right now. We get 90% of our building permit applications through the Simcoe office. So we're trying to use or deploy our resources how they best can meet the need. Mm-hmm. So it's under review right now, but this is strictly because of the staffing change, and we're in the recruiting process right now.
Okay, I understand. I guess the thing that I don't like about that whole process is that the councillors find out last. It would be nice that I didn't get calls from my constituents telling me that. It would be nice if I got calls from staff letting me know, so I could at least field those calls and explain how you did so well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Geisens, next, please. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Just want to mention a couple items. November 11th, Remembrance Day services held across the county. The one I attended was the November 11th service at the Cenotaph in Delhi. It was probably the largest crowd that I had ever seen there, probably 250 people. And there's a mural that's been set up in front dedicated to the 80 persons who lost their lives in the First and Second World Wars. The other item I wanted to mention was the Delhi Chamber of Commerce is off and running. They've kind of rekindled the spirit of business in the community of Delhi. They have an active board of directors now, and they're having their first business after 5 on November the 29th at On Time Precision on Argyle Avenue in Delhi. And their invitations have gone out to other businesses. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sonnenberg, anything for this evening?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have nothing, but I'll just add to what Councillor Height just said about the bank closures. We had a Bank of Montreal close in Waterford recently. It's been there for over 100 years. It's a real blow to the community. But at least in Waterford, we have another branch, a TD branch in town to accommodate people. But I guess it's a sign of the times. It's a numbers game played by the big corporate banks, and if you don't fit the niche, you're gone. So it's a sad thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Deputy Mayor, I just have one item, and I have been receiving several calls about what is happening or not happening to the development on Harbour Street, the condo development, and the people are beginning to wonder, are they ever going to see any construction down there? And what I've asked Mr. Baird, are we meaning the county, doing anything to restrict the building or whatever? So if I could, through you, ask Mr. Baird if he would respond, what are we if we are doing anything to slow that process down?
Sure. Mr. Baird?
Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Wells, the developer has all the approvals in place. It's strictly up to them, their timing, when they're ready to pull the trigger to get that construction started. Obviously, the demolition is done. There's sheet pile wall that has to be done, and I know working within that stream, the water area, there are timelines and limits and so on. We anticipate them moving ahead. It's unfortunate it's been delayed, but it's nothing on the county's part. This is strictly the developer, and anyone who is in that position would be best to contact their agent, the listing agent, or certainly the developer themselves.
Further question, it has also been suggested that we are slowing down the process so that the prices can escalate. I would like your comment on that as well, please.
Through the Deputy Mayor, we have no comment, really. That pricing has got nothing to do with the development process. That's purely between the constructor and the buyer.
Thank you. Councillor Black, anything for this evening?
Deputy Mayor, and since the mayor isn't here, I thought maybe he'd speak about it. But on Saturday, Norfolk County was privileged to have the Lieutenant Governor, it's the Queen's representative in Ontario, Elizabeth, her honor, Elizabeth Dodswell, attend council here in these chambers. The mayor met with her briefly in his office, and then she came out and met with the councillors that were here, yourself, Councillor Oliver, Councillor Brunton, myself. It's unfortunate the other couldn't have met her. She was a lovely, very lovely lady and spoke to all of us. She also had a number of books that she did provide us. I don't know if do we still have more of these, Andy? They could be handed out to the rest of the councilors if they like. I know she left a pile of them anyway. And also some of the military people that were with her, and I was quite surprised that the Brigadier General Kerry Horlock, I used to referee hockey with, and I thought, wow, he's really moved up. And then we all proceeded to the Carolyn Tower, Norfolk County's War Memorial, built in 1925. And it was cool and brisk, but we had a wonderful event there and a good turnout. And again, Lieutenant Governor, Her Honor Elizabeth Dodswell spoke there. I think she was well received and appreciated by all of us. Someone of her stature to come down to a small community such as Simcoe and Norfolk County, and we all appreciated it, and it was even more memorable occasion to honor those that died on our behalf and all the wars, World War I, World War II, Afghanistan, so on, Vietnam. We did have people die. I know they weren't conscripted, but there was some 30,000 Canadians that actually participated in the Vietnam War. Some of them as Canadians, some of them actually as Americans. I know we have Jim Stark from Port Rowan that actually was a Marine in Vietnam.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Brunton, anything for tonight?
Issue, Mr. Chairman, I noticed in the paper, or maybe it was a memo from Sue Bugner, my question is to our treasurer, the tax sales, are you pleased? I noticed a few did not sell, but how will I put this? Did we secure our interest during that sale?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there was 6 properties up for tender. We received bids on 3 of those properties. Our county website has the results of the first and second highest bids on that, and just trying to figure out how to word this. We did not.
Oh,
So
we did
this
not?
way to go.
Oh, disappointing. Thank you.
You're welcome. And now to staff. Ms. Robinson, anything for other business?
Through the Deputy Mayor to Council, I just wanted to do a brief update as of the end of October with respect to our locates. As Council will remember, I had brought forward a report recommending that we bring the locate services in-house, feeling that we could save a considerable amount of money. And Council at that time decided that we were going to tender the project out and receive that, and staff had advised that we expected to see some substantial cost savings as a result of that, although we feel that there could be more if it had been brought in-house. As of the end of October, we have saved approximately $400,000 by doing that. So I just wanted to report a little bit of a good news story with respect to that.
Thank you very much, Lee. Marlene?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cridlin?
Nothing this evening.
Okay, thank you. Over to you, James.
I have nothing this evening, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yakov, anything from your department for other business? Okay, thanks. Chris?
Get going. Nothing today.
That didn't gain you much. Mr. County Manager, do you have anything before we go back to Mr. Slichenkov?
Well, I want to defer it to Mr. Slichenkov. He's got a great piece of news for the future of our corporation.
Okay. Then please, take it away.
So some members of the council, if they've been reading the papers in the last couple of months, are aware of sort of the discussions and the discourse happening in the public surrounding Bill 148 and some of the provisions that were sort of contemplated and the impacts of those provisions, and specifically the implications that they would have, if passed, for municipalities who employ a significant amount of volunteer firefighters. And I believe a couple of the councillors have sent emails to staff sort of wondering what the implications of that would be. A lot of organizations, municipal organizations, AMO in part, have been putting forward submissions on behalf of municipalities articulating the significant costs involved and specifically surrounding some of the call-in language and the costs involved with paying some of the volunteer firefighters basically hours for being on call, even if they weren't called in a 24-hour period. So looking at millions per municipality. So the good news, and that's what's hot off the press, is that there's a letter by Bill Moreau, Minister of Municipal Affairs, basically articulating to heads of council that they're contemplating amendments, and they've heard the municipalities, and that there's intention to exclude essential public services such as fire, utility, and snow removal from those sort of costly on-call provisions that we're going to hit municipalities very hard. So that's very good news. And the other provisions providing clarity that volunteer firefighters would not be entitled to the same pay as full-time firefighters as well. So that's, from an employer's perspective, from a cost mitigation perspective, is quite good news.
Thank you very much for that. That is good news. I know it was a concern to all municipalities. Mr. County Clerk, anything for this evening?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay, this temporary road closures that you've given us is just an FYI, I gather, for this evening?
Yes, it's just for council members' information. It came in just prior to the meeting, and we were a bit busy, so I forgot to hand it out. But just so you're aware of the event going on.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir. Councillor Wells.
That was very good news. Thank you very much. You can bring that kind of news to us anytime we want. And speaking of good news, $400,000 over here, will that be coming to us, or will Ms. Robinson be spending that $400,000? Thank you.
You don't have to answer that question. I just have one item, and that is to inform council, and you're all essentially aware of it, that last evening was the last of the 6 public consultation meetings that our recreation facility subcommittee held with the support of staff, and it too was well attended, hosted here in Simcoe, and lots of good input and questions. So I believe, and I'm kind of directing this to you, Mr. Clerk, as well, our terms of reference are not exactly clear as to what we do now that we have finished our public consultations, but I think it's our committee's intention to meet with the staff team and review all of the input that has been received over these 6 meetings, and to prepare a report of some sort to come to council at the earliest possible date. And so that is our intention. And Mr. Clerk, is that okay with you?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, I think there are a number of steps that would occur. I think what we'd recommend is 2 meetings, one to meet with staff to get that kind of input and direction from the committee on the report, and then another meeting to go over that report before it comes forward to committee for consideration, just so that you can be sure it is what you ultimately want. Within the time frames, the year is pretty much over, and even both meetings, due to the Municipal Act, we have to hold them in a public avenue. So it's something where I think we would recommend a meeting happen sometime in mid to late December, and then the second meeting happen in early January to get something before. But I don't know, staff obviously are the ones that have all the heavy lifting here. My office just has to sit in the room to take minutes. So it's really something that's very dependent upon staff's capability, which I can't really speak to.
And okay, thank you for that. We've had some informal discussion with staff, and it's my understanding, I think, that we could certainly meet sooner than the middle of December for our first meeting. So are you giving us permission as clerk, the earliest possible date that we can agree as a committee and with the staff team to meet? We notify you of that date. It has to be advertised, does it, as a meeting open to the public, should they wish to attend? Okay.
Yes, through you.
Okay,
Mr.
so
Chair,
we
yes.
will do that then, council, with your permission. Committee will decide as soon as we can get together with staff we'll follow the clerk's direction that we'll probably meet twice, once to summarize our impressions, and then a second time just to formalize our recommendations. And that'll come to council and committee at the earliest possible date. Councillor Brunton, did you want to ask something about this item?
Yes, Deputy Mayor, I guess I'm a little bit, I have no problem with the committee preparing a report. My concern is, and I mentioned this last night, are we going back to a consultant? Because there's a lot of things in that, the feedback we got. And I mentioned last night, and the mayor really laid it out in black and white of what we have to do should we proceed. And I use that word if or should. Whatever we do, that there's a lot of things he mentioned, the fundraising, the servicing. I apologize, I don't remember them all, but one of the things I was very concerned about is that we don't go to a consultant, because we can answer a lot of those questions. That if we're going to prepare drawings, we need an architect, not a consultant. And I hope, I guess my question to you, if I made a bill, we haven't gone back to a consultant yet, have we?
Through the chair, at this point, no decision's been made. I think we need the next meeting is crucial to see how we do move ahead, Councillor
I think, Councillor, you raised a good point, and that certainly is one of the things that our committee will discuss at this very first meeting as well, as to whether we should be recommending further outside expertise or whether we feel it can be handled in-house.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for that. All right, then I think, ladies and gentlemen, the only other thing I'm going to mention, I do have a notice of motion here from Councillor Columbus. The clerk says we don't have to deal with it this evening. For the public record, he has given it to us. It'll be noted in these minutes, and I guess 2 weeks hence, Councillor, you'll be able to have that brought forward. So, without anything further then, Council, I do have a motion, and this is moved by Councillor Sonnenberg, seconded by Councillor Height, that bylaw 2017-122, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of Norfolk County at this council meeting held on the 14th day of November 2017, be passed